With me now is Shaniqua McClendon, Vice President of Political Strategy at Crooked Media, and political commentator Ashley Pratt-Oates. Okay, girls, welcome back. Let's get into it, Shaniqua. J.D. Vance, look, he's more of a skilled speaker and debater than Donald Trump is, for sure. But does that mean that his weird views, as Tim Walz puts it, and likely will on Tuesday, are easier to hit back against?
I think something that we definitely have to watch out for with J.D. Vance is the fact that he does something that, he's good at taking the crazy Trump policies and making them sound intelligent, making them sound like something we should all be excited about. And so that is something Tim Walz will have to counter. But I think this is mostly upside for the Walz-Harris campaign. This is an opportunity for Tim Walz to really focus on the policies of him and his and Vice President Harris's campaign, because most people don't decide who they're going to vote for president based on the vice president. So, I think people want to, of course, get to know him more, but I think he has an opportunity to just continue to talk about their economic policies. But on the other side, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's really old. And so when voters are looking at this debate to see, can J.D. Vance step into the presidency, he's going to have to make that case to them. But the thing that I think he's going to have to juggle is sounding like someone who can be president on day one, but also he's going to be performing for an audience of one, Donald Trump. And so I think it's going to be hard for him to make both groups of people happy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ashley, Walz and Vance, they're going to both be standing at podiums, and usually in the VP debates, the candidates are seated. Mics will only be muted at the discretion of the moderators. What kind of effect do you think these smaller procedural details are going to have on the mental game and how voters interpret the debate?
So I think a couple of things there. I think as Shaniqua said, there's only upside for Governor Walz here, and there's room for embarrassment for J.D. Vance. Since getting into the race, his favorables have gone down, whereas Walz's have gone up. And with both gentlemen being in a race where they're both pretty much widely still unknown at the national level, according to polling, there's a real opportunity here, I think, to relate to voters. And that's where the relatability really comes into play for Governor Walz that I think has been talked about. And I think this format will set him up well. Shaniqua referenced that he was a coach prior. He definitely has game time capabilities to be able to turn on that magic. Let's also remember that he came up with the weird term for the Republican ticket, which really caught fire. He does have a way to socialize things in a way that is relatable to all Americans. So I think voters will be looking at this and comparing and contrasting. And again, the numbers don't lie. Vance's favorables have just continued to plummet. And as Shaniqua did mention, this is for an audience of one when it comes to his performance. And I'm surprised Trump hasn't fired him yet because of it.
Interesting. Shaniqua, the vice president role doesn't afford lots of power, certainly as compared to the president. But after January 6th, their role in certifying the election results, it is far more prominent than it used to be. Will Vance be questioned on the 2020 election? And what would he do in 2028? And can that be an effective opening for Walz?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the moderators have to ask that question. He's been asked that question before, and he said if he was in Mike Pence's position on January 6, 2021, he would not have he wouldn't have certified the election. And so I think we already know the answer, but having him say that on national television in front of a bunch of voters who are trying to decide which campaign they want to support will be really important. He's dangerous. He's someone who's been able to use his higher education credentials, his career credentials, to present himself as someone who's going to do good by the country, but he has a lot of dangerous views that, they're coming up in all these podcast interviews that he's done, and hopefully more of the American public will be able to see that during this debate.
Ashley, I want to get your reaction to what we heard from Trump last night about Vice President Harris. Here's part of that.
Kamala is mentally impaired. Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. Okay. She was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
Look, his team tries to get him to focus on the issues, but there's 37 days to go. Is he even capable of mounting anything but personal attacks?
No, this is his playbook, unfortunately, and it's something that, to me, is quite insulting, that he just degrades and insults, and this is acceptable, and that he's even allowed a second term, or trying for a second term at the White House, given the amount of attacks he's launched on just about every type of person that can be out there, which is just, again, it shows the divisiveness of his rhetoric, and it shows that he's not going to be a president for all Americans. It's quite frankly disturbing. And again, you mentioned his strategists can't even get him to align when it comes to talking about policy, which, you know, he would have a real opportunity to do, but instead he just has to stick to the same old Trump talking points, which is to be as ridiculing as he can. So I hope that voters see this and take it to account on Election Day, because, again, this is not somebody who's fit for office.
Okay. Ashley and Shaniqua, I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys. Let's try for this next Sunday so we can go over what happens Tuesday night. Thank you.